Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Let me introduce myself. My name is Rezita Agustina, related to the final exam English Phonetic and Phonology. We will move to the next slide. To the opening, previously we will discuss what is the phonology and phonetic itself, and the difference between of both. We will move to the next slide. About difference phonetic and phonology. So phonetic is the study of human sounds, and phonology is the classification of the sounds within the system of a particular language or language. This science is one of the branches of linguistics that deals with how to pronounce language. So move to the next slide. Before going to content, there are 10 letters are in the English alphabet, 5 short vowels and 5 long vowels. You can see that in PPT. So move to the next slide. There are the phoneme I and ng, mark the different families. The words rain, think, trains, bring, and another words to be like a PPT. You can see that. We will move to the next slide. Go to the content. The content table of contents. The one section is phonological feature. The second content is phonotactic rules. The third section is prosodic and suprasegmental phonology. And the fourth section is phonological rules. We will move the next slide. The first content is phonological feature. In my opinion, phonological feature is the system to describe classes of sounds, distinguish phonemes, specify phonetic detail. It has used to distinguish the sounds of voice and voiceless, nasal, affricate, fricative, and etc. For example, to see the difference of eyes and eyes. Move to the next slide. The second content is phonotactic rules. In my opinion, phonotactic rules, the sound should be systematically and has a predictable structure. For example, in the words book, the sound is predictable and systematic. For everyone should predict that after the consonant B, the next sound should be vowel and after that consonant again. The next slide is the third content is prosodic and suprasegmental phonology. In my opinion, prosodic and supramental phonology is also called as intonation and stress in a word in English. Stress and intonation is important to distinguish the meaning and word classes of a word. For example, in word prison that has two different pronunciation, has two different meaning, we could distinguish it by pay attention to the stress and intonation. There are prison and prison. The next slide. The last content is phonological rules. In my opinion, phonological rules are commonly used in generative phonology as a notation to capture sounds, related operations, and computation the human brain performs when producing or comprehending spoken language. They may use phonetic notation or distinctive feature or but. We will move to the next slide. Yep, the next slide is example of phonotactic constraints. The first, after consonant like b, g, k, or p. Another stop is not permitted. The second example, if a word begins with L or R, every speaker knows the next letter will be a vowel. The third example, no more than 3 consonants allowed. Even this restricted to the following sequence. You can see that. So the next slide is example of phonological feature. You can see that there are nasal, affricate, polysyllable, fricative, vowel, and etc. that you can see that from the p, b, t, d, and etc. We will move to the next slide. Yep, before going to closing, I have some useful tips for us. For all students who want to learn phonology, there are tips from me. The things we should know and pay attention to is sounds, because every sound produces a different sound. Some sounds the same but have different meaning. Some even have the same how the sounds produce itself. So, to avoid that, we have to study and practice continually. Study and practice more and more. The next slide. Yep, lecture is quotes by someone famous. This is a quote word full of wisdom that someone important said and can make the reader get inspired. The next slide. Yep, the closing. I think that's all for me. Thank you for attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.